the idea is for us to discuss a little about what soulmates are. It's a trendy topic, and it has even become the theme of soap operas. And often, we find ourselves in a kind of dual position. Does this exist, or is it fantasy? Is this really just a soap opera theme? What does it mean to be a soulmate? Is this real? Well, so that we can have a brief conversation about this topic and quickly clarify some ideas. All of you received a guide where I included some main ideas that we will discuss so that we can leave here with a certain clarity regarding this subject. You will notice I have the curious habit of, before speaking about a topic, seeing what's said about it nowadays. Today, there is a lot of fantasy surrounding this. It is a mix of Eastern and Western traditions where, in the end, we understand nothing. So I ended up guiding myself more by the Platonic concept, which seems to me the most sensible, the most appropriate. Let's try to understand what this is. To begin with, what are souls? Plato was not a religious man, he was a philosopher. What is the meaning of soul? What was he talking about when he spoke of the soul? I showed you 2 drawings. Actually 3, side by side, right at the beginning. One is a structure of a triangle with a small square, next to it 3 interlaced circles, and finally, a staff with wings. These are representations of the human being in Greece and in India. On one side, what we called a septenary constitution, and on the other, the caduceus of Mercury, what Greeks used, and which Plato himself used. These are important for us to understand what the soul is. Soul comes from anima, that which animates, that which motivates you, that which moves you. So, if we observe closely and have a general idea of what they are trying to convey here, let's use the caduceus, the one in the middle. You will notice that they say that human beings are composed of 3 cores. The soma, which is the physical energetic part, this dense aspect. This little robot that we have here, and all its biology, all its functioning, all the energies that make up this biological robot we use. Which, by the way, is a prefix we still use in our language. I have a physical ailment, a somatic ailment, or I have a psychological ailment that manifests physically, psychosomatic. Greek prefixes are still widely used by us. So, soma is, essentially, the densest and most physical part, fundamentally speaking. In the middle, you have psyche. In fact, there are many myths that talk about this. Psyche is your mental and emotional part. It is this center where our consciousness usually resides the most. And at the top, as the highest possibility, there is nous, the noetic principle, which is this spiritual, immortal part, which is the essence of the human being. For the Greeks, the 2 lower principles, which are soma and psyche. They called mask, persona, from which the word personality comes. And what we are in essence would be this noetic principle, which is at the top. It is said that when these 3 worlds are aligned, we form that staff, which is the staff of the god Mercury, the caduceus of Hermes or Mercury. In other words, we become an instrument in the hands of something divine. We connect 2 worlds, the spiritual world and the material world, when these 3 possibilities are in alignment. So, what would the soul be within this whole story? If soul is anima, it is what animates, that which motivates. It is the source from which our motivations particularly arise. And our motivations, at this moment, come above all from the psyche. They are psychic motivations. What I like, what I do not like, what I want, what I do not want, what I think and what I choose not to think. So, as my friend Plato was saying just a moment ago, if we were to look only at this psychic world and try to find our twin, it would not be very difficult because there are plenty of twins out there with the same psychic flaws that we have, with the same tendencies, with the same likes and dislikes. In truth, the idea of the soulmate was more than that. For the Platonic tradition and for other traditions, it was a union not only in this world, but in all 3 worlds, in all 3 possibilities. So Plato said that a human being can unite with another through any one of these 3 possibilities, the soma, the psyche, and the nous. From this comes another concept, which we will not delve into deeply here, because it would be a long story, and that is the concept of Platonic love. Plato himself spoke a little about it just now. Love is the search for that which we lack. It is a feeling of incompleteness on each of these planes. which leads us to seek something, and this gives rise to three possibilities, three types of love. There is a certain myth that he tells in the Symposium, where he says that there were two divine beings, Poros and Penia, one representing abundance and the other poverty, and that together they gave birth to this spirit, which is love, which is a middle ground between fullness, abundance, and total lack, which is poverty. He would have something, but would still be far from being complete. And this search for completeness, this quest for unity, this thirst for fulfillment, would be the driving force that moves beings in the direction of love. In other words, the entire universe for the Greek tradition, as Hesiod, as Plato, and as many others taught, would move in search of a lost completeness, in search of a lost unity. It is the pursuit of that which we lack. Now, this search is best carried out the more we truly understand what we are missing. If we believe that what we lack exists only on the physical level, then our love will be merely physical. If we believe that what we lack is only on the psychic level, we will have a love that is merely psychic. If we have some perception of this noetic, spiritual world, and we feel a need there, if we feel a need for completeness in that realm, then we will also experience completeness on the spiritual plane, and that is when you truly have soulmates. Shall we try to understand this a little more slowly, calmly, so that we can truly grasp it? Imagine what it is like when two people come together solely and exclusively on the physical plane. Unfortunately, this is the prevailing pattern of unions in our current historical moment. If you look back historically, about 100 years ago, we lived through a romantic era. A little over 100 years ago, when unions were more psychic in nature. Now we have shifted more toward the physical. It is a somatic union, a union of soma, the body. Well, for philosophy, this type of union, which is so fashionable today, because we live in a society that equates happiness with pleasure. Happiness is no longer about fulfillment. It is no longer something deeper, it is simply pleasure. So, the union between people often happens only on this physical, bodily level. It is very common, as another philosopher, Kant, once said, for one person to use another merely as an object to satisfy their own needs, rather than as a subject in the same condition, with the same needs as themselves. So, it is common in such a materialistic society, one of disposable objects, for people to seek in others the most sought-after and coveted object on the market, and for union to occur only on a level of utility, what the other can provide for me. In other words, a union primarily physical. What does philosophy say? What did the philosophers say about this kind of union on the physical level? If it is a union based merely on appetites, desires, and pleasure, do you think that the union of a person who seeks someone with this motivation is very different from the union someone has, for example, with a chocolate bar when they're hungry? What is the union with a chocolate bar? It's pleasant and gives me a moment of pleasure. It's over. I don't spend the whole day thinking of the chocolate bar. I use it and discard it. There is another curious characteristic in this somatic love. It becomes exhausted with the very intense repetition of the object. Let's say one of you is a chocoholic. Did you know there's a chocolate diet? Has anyone heard of that? There are so many that it's even hard to catalog them all. There is the chocolate diet, specifically for chocoholics. It works like this. You can eat as much chocolate as you want. There's one detail. You can only eat chocolate. First day, chocoholic paradise. Chocolates of every color, every type, Swiss, Brazilian. On the second day, what's on your menu? Chocolate. It's not quite as pleasant anymore. On the third day, guess what's on the menu? Chocolate. By the fourth day, no chocoholic can stand chocolate anymore. Why? Because no matter how much you like chocolate and how much pleasure it brings you, the repetition of the same kind of thing tires the senses. This attraction, when it exists only on the sensory, physical level, is fueled by novelty, by the variety of the object. When it comes to chocolate, this is understandable. But when it comes to a human, it's cruel. But it works more or less the same way. When union happens only through the soma, it is very quick. It is exhausted when the object begins to be offered in a very repetitive way. The palate becomes tired, and a need for variety arises. That's where this modern notion comes from, of love being infinite while it lasts. It's an infinite palate only while it lasts. So, this is the fastest and most disposable kind of love. Moving on to the next level, which is the level of the human psychic soul. What is it like when a person unites with another at the level of the psyche? The psyche operates with a certain logic. It is about what I like and what I reject. I seek out the things I like, the things that are similar to me, and I reject the things I don't like, the things that are different from me. This is the typical romantic couple. I like this movie. Me too. I like this book. Me too. I like this food. Me too. We are soulmates. We will be happy forever. But notice something curious. The way our own psyche operates. Do you still like exactly the same foods you liked 10 years ago? No. And do you think that 10 years from now you will still like them? So, what today serves as a point of connection? Do you realize that? As time goes by, it drifts, and usually in different directions. Will you still like the same music, the same movies, the same food 10 years from now? Obviously not. The psyche drifts, and often it is carried along by trends, drawn by attractions that do not drift in the same direction. One goes this way and the other goes that way. Thus, what once served as a point of unity ceases to be so over time. So, this psychic love tends to create unions that last longer than those based on the physical. But it is not something that guarantees much. Many times, it leads to a relationship that falls into habit, into mutual routine. But love itself gradually erodes over time, because it is based on fleeting affinities. And what about the last point, up there? That is the love of nos, noetic love, the love of that spiritual essence, which all these traditions believed that human beings possessed, and which was considered their own true nature. What would that be like? How would that work? Imagine it's a Saturday night, almost 8 p.m. It is a time when society offers countless options for leisure and entertainment. Of course, Plato's interview was very entertaining. But the fact that you are here is certainly not just for fun. The fact that you are here is because you feel the need for something more. To know yourselves more deeply. To reflect on the quality of relationships you build with the lives of those around you. Of wanting to become better as human beings. Of wanting to be a positive force in the life of humanity. In other words, a desire to contribute. A certain thirst of the soul for fraternity, for integrity, for honesty, for goodness. There is something like this within us, and when it is nourished, it grows. Can you imagine the two human beings can unite through this point? When both look in the same direction, imagine that you witness an act of honor or a work that moves you. Something beautiful that brings tears to your eyes. And you share this with the person with whom you share your life. And they also find it beautiful, are also moved, and tears come to their eyes as well. When you see an act of generosity, of fraternity, something ignites in your heart, wishing to also become the image and likeness of such an example. And you look at the person beside you, and they are moved by the same thing. It is the same nobility, the same dream, the same desire, the same thirst to be human. When there is a union around this point, does it wear out over time? Does it change over time? Someone who loves justice today, will they stop loving it 10 years from now? 20 years from now? Will they ever stop loving justice? Those who love beauty, who love goodness, who love harmony, those who have a thirst in their soul to become more human, more complete, will this ever cease to exist, or will it likely become even more intense? Notice that this is a factor that does not corrode. Isn't in the material world. The Greeks used to say that everything that is a child of Kronos, of time, will be eaten by its father. Do you remember the god Kronos who devoured all his children? These feelings I am speaking to you about are not children of Kronos. Or is justice a child of Kronos? Fraternity? Goodness? These things are not children of Kronos. Therefore, they cannot be corroded by him. They exist in a dimension that he cannot reach. And when we unite for the sake of this dimension, imagine it as a star. The closer you draw to it, and the closer another draws to it, you are not only closer to the star, you're closer together, because you draw nearer and nearer until you reach unity. So this, for Plato, was the fundamental point, union on this plane. A noetic union where people would dream together, where people would be moved together in the presence of beauty, where people would be capable of having great dreams of serving humanity, of expanding in wisdom and virtue. When they resonated together on that same string, in that same harmony, this was a noetic union, and a union that, the more it was achieved on this plane, the closer people would become. Now, think carefully, this noetic union itself is already somewhat complex, not common in a society that does not cultivate this noetic aspect within us, nor even tells us that it exists, nor gives us much opportunity to realize it. But let us suppose it happens, that you find someone who shares this with you. This person is not necessarily a partner or spouse. This can be achieved, as Plato said, between a master and a disciple. Many times throughout the history of philosophical schools, like the Academy, bond between masters and disciples was exactly this. The disciple had a dream, and the master encouraged him, showed him even the furthest possibilities of his dream, and lifted him up. Some time ago, I gave a lecture about Khalil Gibran. I included one of his poems for you on the back of this page, and Mary Elizabeth Haskell, who is the woman who made Khalil Gibran who he was. And at a certain moment, he writes to her, "Mary, the thing I love most about you is that I always hear you say, I would like to see Khalil at the top of that mountain. And behind, deep in your voice, in silence, I can hear, I would like to see Khalil Gibran tomorrow at the top of that mountain. It's wonderful to have someone who dreams with us of reaching the mountaintop. And it is wonderful to have someone who believes that we can be there tomorrow." This woman, who was Mary Elizabeth Haskell, is certainly the one most responsible for the greatness of Khalil Gibran. She dreamed with him and encouraged him to rise. Sometimes this union can happen between a master and a disciple. It can happen between two friends. Gibran and Mary Haskell were never married, never. They married, but not to each other. It can happen in a relationship between father and son. It can happen in various circumstances, and they are truly soulmates. There is no doubt about it. The concept of soulmate as it relates to a couple, in the Platonic sense, in the sense of some philosophers, is something beyond that, an even greater and even rarer possibility. They used to say the following: imagine that in the case of a couple, these people meet up there, both running after a star. And they look to the side and see someone with the same drive, with the same intensity, running after that star. Logically, if they are both chasing after a star, they love justice, they love fraternity, and they love the things that lead in that direction. Those who love the ends also love the means. This creates a psychic affinity, because if I love, say, elevation of consciousness toward the good, I will love, for instance, a Beethoven symphony, because it leads my consciousness toward the good. I will love a meaningful conversation, because it lifts my awareness to good. This ends up generating psychic affinities. So, they also unite on the psychic level. It may happen, eventually, that there is a physical attraction, and they unite as well on the physical plane. And then Plato will say that this is the moment when the circuits are closed. These are soulmates, they complete each other on every level. Imagine having a being who, whatever needs you may have, they are able to respond in the same tone. Do I have a physical need? They complete each other on that plane. I discover something beautiful, I share it, and they also resonate and find it beautiful. I pause to reflect on my dreams, be inspired by my dreams, and they are too. When I speak about God, they share in it. I talk of honor, they share in it. When I talk about the book I read, they share in it. When I want to share physical affection, they do too. When this happens on all three planes, it is a perfect fit. This is what soulmates are. Is it rare? Yes, very rare. I have shown you here a very well-known Eastern representation, which is the Tao, Yin, and Yang, united, fitting together. Imagine, one of them alone does not spin, it just wobbles. The other also does not spin, it just wobbles. But when there is this perfect fit, they spin. They gain an extraordinary evolutionary speed and an exceptional capacity for service to humanity. These are personalities that in general become historical figures. Therefore, it is very rare. This is something that sometimes leaves people a bit disenchanted. Oh, I came here, as Plato said, find out who soulmate is. And the matter of finding his soulmate throughout history is indeed quite rare, and it is a matter of each individual's personal merit. Because it is a union that gives rise to historical personalities. So we will see that every time we manifest ourselves in the world. As I have mentioned in some lectures, such as the feminine ideal, every time we manifest, the world is dual. And the world will always generate a manifestation in one polarity, masculine or feminine, a perspective from one side or the other. And the way we will shape our dreams, the way we make our dreams come true in this world, will always take into account the angle of polarity we find ourselves in. So if I am a lady, I will see the world through the perspective of a lady. And I will see it according to that polarity. Something will be missing for me. If I am a gentleman, I will see the world from the perspective of a gentleman, and something will be missing for me. Therefore, the fulfillment of my dreams will be incomplete, because there will be some circumstance I will find yet not recognize, because it does not align with the perspective through which I see reality. Now, imagine what it means when two beings meet, where there are no rough edges. They complete each other in all three worlds. There is no desire for one to dominate the other. There is a sense of mission that transcends individual personalities. In any circumstance that the world presents, they are able to rise above it. Whether it is heat or cold, darkness or light, softness, resistance, because it is duality fused into unity, so it moves forward generating momentum. I spoke to you about a beautiful example, which few people know, which is this anonymous woman named Mary Elizabeth Haskell, who was, throughout her entire life, behind Khalil Gibran. Certainly, Gibran would not have become who he was without Haskell's presence, who was as remarkable as he was. When you read the cards, you don't know which card is most beautiful, his or hers. They exchanged letters all their lives. She had no desire whatsoever to make her own name known, nothing at all. But she made Gibran into who he became. You will find many such cases throughout history, those enjoying historical romances. There is that marvelous book by Christian Jack, who is both a novelist and a historian, where he tells us about an ancient Egyptian couple, Ramses and Nefertari, in which she was a priestess and he was a candidate for king. Together they formed one of the greatest governments Egypt had. When he asks her to marry him, she says, "I only love you because you love Egypt more than you love me. For if you loved me more than Egypt, I do not accept someone like that beside me. You're not worthy of me." Can you understand this? To love humanity more, to love unity, to love honor, rather than loving a material personality. For someone to be worthy of standing by my side, they must love a star. Can't be less. He recognized in her the woman he wanted as his queen. To make history, to build the greatness of Egypt. There are very few times when we have historical accounts of cases like this, of beings who fit perfectly together on every level. As a result, they generate an extraordinary momentum. So you might say, how discouraging. So, will I never find this? That's not quite it. That's not what this is about. In truth, whatever the union, whatever the relationship, even if we are not soulmates, living together always enriches us. It is not without reason that we were made to be social beings. Even if there is not a perfect fit at the edges, it is precisely in the friction of those edges that living together allows us to grow. When the other person bothers me in some way, it is clearly because that is an element within me that I have not yet fully processed, because, as the same philosophy also teaches, we are a microcosm. Everything that exists in the universe is represented within me. What I do not see and do not master within myself, when I see it outside, I cannot accept. So, when another person bothers me in some way, in truth, they represent an edge I have not yet recognized, an element I am unwilling to see. The other person offers me an opportunity for self-knowledge. As Marcus Aurelius said, the loss of a single human being impoverishes me because it means a unique and unrepeatable universe with which I have ceased contact. The other person does not need to be a soulmate in order for them to help you grow. Every interaction, when we work with acceptance and understanding, in smoothing out our rough edges so that we can be in harmony with others. This is what it's about, and this is what leads us to evolution. This will one day make us worthy of having soulmates. If we look at it ultimately, all souls of humanity are twins, because they all came from the one. This is what I shared with you on the sheet. This is the myth of Osiris in Egypt. Osiris, the great god of creation, whose body was shattered into countless pieces. These pieces were cast into the Nile. The waters of the Nile represent the waters of matter, the material world, and these fragments of Osiris' body are this flame of nose, the unique identity of each one of us within the material world. Therefore, all beings are soulmates. One day, all will reunite in unity. Now, what you will notice is that those beings, who, throughout history, managed to find their soulmates, do you think they found them by chasing after their soulmate? Or by pursuing themselves? Certainly, by pursuing themselves and their own dreams. When we seek too much, there is an excessive emotional neediness of wanting to find the soulmate, which ends up creating delusions and fantasies. It's that old story, that not-so-funny joke, about two friends who, after many years, meet again. One got married while the other had not. Then, one turns to the other and asks, "You got married. Did you find the ideal woman?" "I did. I am happily married." "And you didn't get married?" "I didn't get married." "Why not? Didn't you find the ideal woman?" "I did." "So what happened?" "She was looking for the ideal man." It really can happen, indeed. The woman of your dreams is a lady. Are you a gentleman? It won't work if you meet her. Better not meet her for now. In other words, consider every human relationship, whatever it may be, as an opportunity. The other person offers you a chance, whether through what attracts you or what causes you to feel rejection. It is an opportunity to know yourself and smooth your rough edges. People do not find their soulmate until they find their own original soul, because there is no way for you to know who your soulmate is if you don't know your own soul. By seeking yourself in depth, by having a goal to seek to develop this human flame within us, which is nose, one eventually ends up uniting not only with a single soulmate, but with all soulmates, because humanity's destiny is unity. As I was telling you, this is a concept today prone to distortion, since we in the West have received an influx of information from Eastern philosophy, and we don't really know how to process it. Sometimes this creates a lot of confusion. There was even a soap opera about it. What is a soulmate? Oh, I met this person in several past incarnations, and now I've met them again. This must be a soulmate. What if you believe in reincarnation? Meeting someone over several lifetimes and meeting them again now could be collective karma. They might have made a huge mistake together and are still paying for it today. That does not mean soulmates. Be careful. So, it's a set of elements that we don't know how to handle. We don't really know what we're doing. Creates plenty of fantasy. A soulmate, in this ideal sense that I mentioned to you, could be a single encounter and is not very common. I don't know if Ramses ever met Nefertari again, or if Gibran will ever meet Mary Haskell again someday. But they met once and made history. It may be that they never met and never meet again, but if they do meet, they make history. Why? Because both were running, not after their soulmate, but after their own soul. And suddenly, they looked to the side and saw that someone else was running too. They had a goal, they had a guiding star. Therefore, it is not about many encounters, not about reincarnation, or anything too esoteric, or, as we like to joke here at the school, anything too strange. These are simple things. A soulmate is something for complete human beings. People who are seeking their own soul, and by seeking and finding their own soul, they can compare it and recognize someone who has a soulmate. Because otherwise, soulmates among the soulless, how could that be? Absence of soulmates doesn't exist. One must seek their own soul. Thus, the idea of souls that unite around a guiding star, around an ideal, is not simply a romantic myth for the eve of Valentine's Day. A myth, because philosophy is the love of wisdom, and to love wisdom is to seek to develop that which is most noble within us, and in seeking, we draw closer to all those who are also searching. This, consequently, also tends to generate a psychic closeness. And it may, eventually, lead to a physical closeness. By doing so, we may come to have a historic opportunity, but it is not simply an opportunity to enjoy a special relationship, but rather to serve humanity with particular effectiveness, because all those who were soulmates didn't use this fact just to fulfill their fantasies. They used it to serve humanity with particular effectiveness. They made history, they blazed a trail, so they left us possibilities that we would not have known except through them. And that is why they found each other, because they had a shared mission. Today, however, our selfishness is so great that we think, fulfill our fantasy. We are going to find a soulmate. We don't need much. For that, all we need is a twin body. And that is enough when we are only seeking pleasure. Well, these were some ideas I wanted to share with you, as I mentioned, in a very brief way. This is a subtopic within a larger theme, which is platonic love. I recommend to you, if you are interested, if you enjoy this subject, that you watch the DVD that discusses platonic love. We have DVD series. All of our lectures, like this one that is being recorded, allow you to delve deeper into the subject. Come take because the philosophy course is the search for one's own soul, and it greatly facilitates finding your soulmate. All of this is part of our philosophy course program. As the presenter said, who did not introduce himself, so I do not know who he was. We have a new class starting next week. Every time we hold lectures on Saturdays, those who enroll that day receive course materials free. In other words, it is a special offer for those who enroll today. I hope to have the opportunity to meet you next Thursday at the start of this new class. Anyone who seeks their soul has every possibility. In fact, I cannot imagine any other path to one day find a soulmate. And even further in the future, to find all soulmates. To find the heart of humanity, but first and foremost, to seek your own heart. The possibility of loving gently grows alongside the human capacity to know oneself, to act effectively in the world, to master oneself. In other words, the human ability to love expands as a person grows. Plato had a wonderful saying that the best thing we can do for those we love is to grow, because only then can we offer them something meaningful. When we grow, we can look at the person we love and say, "You can always count on me." Why is that? Because I have enough inner strength to ensure that my whole life is aligned in one direction, with the volatility of our emotions, with instability in our emotional lives. What can we truly offer to those we love? Today I am with you, but 10 years from now, I don't know. We will see what happens. What can we guarantee to those we love, except our own growth as human beings? So, the best thing we can do for the people we love is to grow, because only then can we truly offer them anything. Imagine an Egyptian pyramid with a single apex. The human ideal consists of values, virtues, and wisdom. The evolutionary ideal for humanity is to reach wisdom. This is the foundation of philosophy. A philosopher loves wisdom and believes that evolution always moves in the direction of wisdom. To reach the apex of the pyramid, you can ascend by any of its four faces, according to your nature. Because if I try to ascend according to your nature and not my own, will not reach the top. I will be mediocre. So, if I am an artist and you are a scientist, the higher we climb toward that apex, I will understand science, you will understand art, and we will meet each other at the top. Because it is said when we reach the summit, a person is not one thing but all things. But to ascend, one must follow their nature. Hence the necessity of discovering one's individuality. The know thyself. The question sounds amusing, but it's relevant. Everyone faces this dilemma. The story of Vinicius de Moraes, may it be infinite while it lasts, which, in truth, as Drummond used to say, it is a rhyme, but it is not a solution. That's not how it is. Plato said that true love is infinite, or it is not love at all. Now, as he also stated, true love must be learned. People tend to believe that loving is something automatic. In fact, there is something amusing that I always mention in my lectures about love. It's as if you met someone and they told you, "I will be a great painter, I'll be a painter like Leonardo da Vinci." 10 years go by and you run into that person again. Then one day you meet and ask them, "Did you change your mind?" No, I still have the same idea. I want to be a great painter. What are you doing? Are you studying drawing, painting? Are you enrolled in any fine arts school? No, none of that is needed. What do you mean? It's not necessary. No, it's not necessary. I just need to find the right person. The moment I find someone who really looks like the Mona Lisa, I will be a great painter. Really? What do you all think? He's going to carefully search for someone who truly looks like the Mona Lisa and paint that enigmatic smile. That's what he's going to paint. But why? Because he found the person, but he wasn't prepared for it. In other words, the process isn't simply about changing the object. It's about growing, transforming ourselves, enabling ourselves to love, because love is a matter of learning. Our capacity to love grows as we ourselves grow as human beings. Did you change the object? There will be a period of wear and you'll end up endlessly changing the object. As our master Luis Carlos says, if you don't like your face in the mirror, don't change the mirror. Because that makes no sense at all. Change your own face, because it's no use, as long as our love remains only at the physical and psychological level. It will inevitably cause some wear. What should I do? Do I endlessly change the object or change myself? It is much more effective, much more philosophical. But what he's talking about is the drama of all relationships nowadays. Everyone encounters this issue. They may not express it, but everyone faces it. In fact, you will notice that there is a factor. Usually, when you pursue a star, you will experience a union on the noetic plane, on the spiritual plane. Consequently, there should also be a union on the psychic plane, because this will generate affinities. This is something curious that happens, modestly, here in our case within New Acropolis. When someone from our group, among the teachers, reads a good book and says, "Look, I read a good book." You can read it since you'll likely enjoy it, because things that move in the same direction end up generating psychological affinity too. Now, sometimes the somatic plane doesn't connect. There might be some differences, like age for example, that doesn't connect, doesn't link people. Because there is also a certain magic in this somatic plane. It also has its own laws, and it may happen that it doesn't connect. Then they're good friends. But if it does connect, the circuit is complete. And there is a very beautiful saying that goes, all the fields of human nature unite at the banquet of the soul. Body, emotions, all join soul's banquet. Each plane has its own mechanics, its own laws. Sometimes there is no connection physically. If there's a connection, the circuit's complete.